The Emissary, Dax, The Nagus, Duet, and In the Hands of the Prophets. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 1. And everybody's like, what, the entire season? Yes, the entire season. This is kind of a retrospective because this is almost 3 years after we did Season 1. But now we're going back and we are going to drop this in so that you have a full experience. Every single episode reviewed and every single season reviewed. How you doing, Cirroc? This is fun.
Doing great. Doing great. How about you?
I'm excited for this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Honestly, this is going to be really cool. I'm wearing my Quarks shirt because I feel like during Season 1, when we're reviewing Season 1, I was very proud of this shirt. I feel like I wore this shirt 2 or 3 times going, hey, I'm wearing Quarks today. And then Aron will be talking about Aron Eisenberg a lot, who played Nog and who started this show. He was always like, yeah, Ryan, we know you wore that one already. And I'm like, really? I thought this was the first. No, it's like the 3rd time, Ryan. He'd always call me out on that.
Yeah, he was the best at calling people out. Obviously, you mentioned, talking about Aron and how special he is to us. And, really the journey of watching these shows begins here in the first season and with this inspiration of rewatching DS9. So that's really one of the major attachments that I have to the memory of the beginning of watching this show and kind of starting this journey is Aron, kind of my buddy Nog pushing me to get back in the No J consortium. And so
yeah,
that's a special thing for me.
Yeah, that's why I'm most excited about this first season, is because Aron was with us not only for 16 episodes, or like it was 15 episodes of Discovery, 1 episode of The Orville, and then at our 17th episode, we started Deep Space Nine. And so and Aron was with us for all 19 episodes of Season 1. And then everybody knows he passed away the day before we started recording Season 2. So we obviously took an extended break there and continued on with Malissa Longo, Aron's widow. So this entire season is like going to be the memories of, we'll be like, oh, I remember that episode. But I think more than anything, we're just going to remember, all the hijinks and all the razzing that Aron did to us. Like he would be like virtually pulling our underwear over our heads. You know what I mean? He was doing atomic wedgies on us virtually through Zoom.
Yeah, and just the energy that he brings, that's one of the things that's so infectious about Aron's personality is his energy. Mm-hmm. The jokes and the laughs, that's part of it, but it's really just the positivity. It's the kind of camaraderie that he builds with you. All of that means so much in kind of how he builds his relationships. And I remember, that being one of the biggest motivations for me to be involved with doing this and trying to get involved with it, because I knew that his heart was in the right place and that he would bring, not just the comedy aspect, but really a sincere kind of critique about what he was observing on the shows.
Yeah, very passionate, yeah. Very observant, very inquisitive. So I think we can get into this, and Aron's going to be with us the whole time. We're gonna hear him laughing at us. We're gonna see him flipping us off. So everybody at home, come join the ride as we talk about Deep Space Nine, Season 1. The first review episode, we actually did it. It aired May 6th, 2019. Actually, originally we had Jared Cooper with us for the first 16 episodes. He was no longer with the show starting right here. So this was like a new era with just you, myself, and Aaron. And then we did all of season 1. So it was a fun time. We were just an infant little podcast, giggling around and having fun. So episode 1 was The Emissary. And I remember my first thought, first of all, I still think The Emissary is the best pilot of any Star Trek series ever. I think that's how I feel about it. I feel pretty strongly about it. I feel like it's pretty solid. And it also won Best Pilot in a Legacy Series at the 2022 Lappy Awards by Virtual TrekCon. And all of the voters, I guess it wasn't by us, it was the voters that actually voted that. We didn't pick that, but I had a feeling it might win. Do you remember anything about that first episode? You and Dad fishing on the dock?
Fishing on the dock of the bay.
That's the one.
Yes, I do remember. So it was the first time Avery and I worked together, and this was the beginning of our relationship, and it was so easy. That was one of the things, that the level of comfort that I felt, and the ease at which everything was done. Mm-hmm. I felt really comfortable, and the fact that we were at this outdoor setting on this ranch. I believe it was at the Disney Ranch, if I'm not mistaken.
Where's that?
I was like 12, so I wasn't the one driving. So, but I'm not sure exactly.
I wanted to ask you though, was that the first scene you shot with Avery? Do you remember if that was like your first scene shooting?
Yeah, that was the first scene.
Really?
Yeah, the first scene was that day, and it was an outdoors, place. I had never been fishing before. That was kind of that was my acting right there. It was acting like I knew what I was doing, because I had never been fishing before, and so that was just the idea of it was fun for me, even though I wasn't really fishing. It just
Oh, we lost you for a second there, Cirroc. That's too bad.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah. Which is too bad, because it sounded like you were going off on a really good story, and then you just got quiet for a few seconds there.
Oh man, no, I was talking about fishing and just being out there and enjoying the outdoors. Avery made me feel so comfortable, and the director, David Carson, was he knew what he was doing. He stayed out of the way. He made me feel at ease. The lighting was great. I felt that the whole moment was a special moment.
Yeah. That first episode. Oh, and by the way, you're back here. There you are. There you are. Everybody listening in. In my background, I've got the cast, but my chair is kind of blocking Cirroc's face, which is very rude of me. But I don't know. When you watch that first episode, and Star Trek's good at this, it's like what the show is about. After that first episode, you're like, okay, I get it. Here's my crew. Here's their situation. With Voyager, we know very clearly what's the mission. Their mission now is that they need to come home back to the Alpha Quadrant. Deep Space Nine, we get it. We know where they are. Enterprise, we get it after the first episode. And this one was probably the best of the lot, in my opinion. Introduces some very different and interesting characters. But that was the first episode, entitled Emissary. God, I could talk about that one forever. Really loved it.
There's a lot to talk about. I mean, just the fact that Jennifer Sisko dies in the beginning, and you start with that level of tragedy, and the stakes are raised to that level. You see Sisko challenging Picard, and him essentially telling him to, go pound sand, to put it mildly. And, there was a lot of conflict there, and they really set the stakes really high. Yeah. They also gave us, they set the stage for what would eventually be one of the greatest ensembles in television, which is
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, this station in which they would introduce all of these wonderful characters. We were essentially biting on the hook in this first episode as the audience, as far as what the story would be and what the premise was, like as you discussed.
Yeah, really just a very interesting and different ensemble cast than what Star Trek fans were used to from the original series and Next Generation. And that aired January 3rd, 1993. So just as soon as they could possibly do it in 1993. The second episode was called Past Prologue. Tana Loss, a former Bajoran terrorist during the occupation, asks Sisko for asylum on Deep Space Nine. Meanwhile, the station's last Cardassian inhabitant, Garrick, possibly a former spy for the Cardassian government, proves an interesting mystery to Bashir. So this is when we are finally introduced to Garrick. I say finally, it's the second episode, but
the third technically, but yeah.
Right. And so he's, we're introduced to him, he's introduced to Bashir, and we are introduced to that friendship there, or that weird, tug and pull that they have during their lunches. But then that kind of disappeared later on into Bashir and O'Brien. And that's too bad, because I would have liked to see more Bashir and Garrick.
I would have too, because I like the back and forth between the two of them. I thought it was just great. But Garrick, in this introduction of his character, is one of the biggest mysteries of this show. And he starts off as a mystery in this episode. So he's so good at words. He's so playful, but he's also very suspicious and very in tune with what's happening on the station. So his observation skills are out of this world. But I just love that they have a character like Garrick, who is, kind of an inside man into the Cardassians and their occupation, and giving us some of a connection to that backstory as well.
Yeah, it was a brilliant idea to have a Cardassian, because Deep Space Nine already brought in a Ferengi, which is, look, Next Generation had a Klingon, and that was their big, bold move, right? Deep Space Nine had a Ferengi. You think that's their big, bold move, but then they're like, let's also get a Cardassian. So, they're really trying to show more perspectives. There's the Federation, there are the Bajorans. Now we have the Ferengi, we have a Cardassian. You know what I mean? Like, they're showing so much more. And when we're introduced to Garrick, we're just like, whoa, this is cool. How many more perspectives are we going to get? And everybody's just falling in love with Garrick. I can't imagine anybody doesn't like him.
And what he also becomes kind of reminds you of is, or reminds me of, is that sometimes we have very general stereotypes of people based on their place of origin, right? So you're like, those people in Germany, they're all a bunch of, so it's like you have a certain stereotype based on whatever historical facts or whatever your bias has leaned towards. As far as your upbringing, it's always those people are like this, whatever that like this is. Mm-hmm. And ultimately what we see in real life as well as in this show is that people are much more dynamic than that. And there's so much contextual layer to who people are and what people, countries are made up of, this very varied opinions and people having their own perspectives. And I think that's another thing that Garrick offers for the Cardassians, something different. It's not just like he's a yes man who follows in the totem pole, but he's actually has a guy, his own mind, his own, motivations.
Right. And those stereotypes just don't always work, except for French people are snobs. That is fact check verified. I'm just kidding. French people, I love you. I'm French, so I'm allowed to make that joke. They're not all snobby. I've found. In fact, I found them to be extremely hospitable. But I'm one of them when I go visit friends. So maybe, so I don't know. It might just be that like, oh, he's one of us, he's family, and then if you show up with an American accent or speaking American, they're like, fuck this guy. But who knows? The world may never know. Are French snobs or aren't they? I don't know. I say no.
No.
The third episode.
But you understand what I mean about that.
Oh, absolutely.
Comparison. Yeah, it gives you a whole new insight into the Cardassians.
Yeah, no, totally. Which is something that we were all thirsting for anyway, because they're such an interesting race. They might be my favorite Star Trek alien race because they're so interesting and they're so devious and poetic and sinister and complex. It's a really, really interesting race. So the third episode was called A Man Alone. Ibadan, a criminal Odo has dealt with before, returns to Deep Space Nine, only to be murdered shortly after, leaving Odo to be the prime suspect. God, this feels like forever ago. Jake and Nog's troublemaking prompt Keiko to do something helpful for the station's children. I believe this is when she opened up the school, right?
Yeah.
And you and Nog were like two of the 8 or 9, students on the whole station, right?
Yeah, and it was funny because when I remember in that classroom, how the classroom had basically every age of kid that you could put. It's like he's 30 years old and this kid's like 6 months. You're like, I was like, this is, what kind of learning is this? There's no levels, there's no grade levels.
I know. But that's, I guess, what can you do other than get more teachers? But yeah, if you only have one teacher, then they got to cover everything. But like, what do you, you could teach certain lessons, stories that kind of work, for most ages. But once you start getting into anything complex like math or sentence structure or just language, you don't need to learn the IOUs and the ABCs and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to learn, how to do an outline of your hand and turn it into a turkey.
Right.
Exactly. And on the other side of that, a 5-year-old is going to get lost if you even mention geometry or the most simple of non-arithmetic, mathematics.
So let me ask you, because I don't remember exactly, but it felt like they decided, no, this is not the way we want to go with Keiko, because eventually we see that she becomes a botanist and goes off and she's like on other planets, right?
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly when that happened. I feel like it happened maybe around the 3rd season or something like that.
Right.
But I think it would have been cool had she remained the teacher, because then you could have storylines between Keiko and Nog and Jake, who dominated Deep Space Nine in the non-appearance mentions department. You know what I mean? Like, rather than getting non-appearance mentions, you could actually have, storylines. Then Molly kind of starts going, and there could be, another kid that joins in because somebody else is coming. That could be like a B plot if there's a character that comes on the station and they're the A plot, but then their kid is there too, or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that could have been done, but I feel like, I guess they did after 2 or 3 stories or plots with it, they're like, yeah, moving on.
They were like, blow up the school. Didn't they blow up the school? Blow it up.
Yep.
So yeah, basically.
So the next one was, and I never know how to pronounce this. Some people pronounce it Babel, other people pronounce it Babel. The crew and civilian population of Deep Space Nine begin to speak gibberish when a plague, an aphasia virus engineered by the Bajorans as a weapon against the Cardassians, accidentally gets released into the station's atmosphere. Now, this one was directed by Paul Lynch. And I was wondering, do you remember anything about Paul Lynch? Because I don't remember mentioning his name very often.
That's a very good question. I do remember his name because obviously worked with him.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember like his face, and that's something I'm going to try to look into right quick.
Okay, so he did do 5 episodes. He did A Man Alone. Oh, so he did the episode just right before too. So A Man Alone, Babel, Q-less, The Passenger, and Battle Lines, all in the first season. So that's what it is. He did 5 episodes, all in the first season, and then moved on to other things because he's got a very storied career after that, but no other Star Trek. He did Next Generation.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like he did 5 episodes of Next Generation as well.
Yeah, I remember Paul now that I see him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he did a lot of the first season episodes.
Yeah.
But I just can't remember like any kind of personal conversations that we had outside of just, I remember working with him.
Yeah, it was just an interesting thought because, I don't remember mentioning his name, but that's because it was all in the first season. And remember, Aron Eisenberg was the one that would always say, who was the director? Did you notice what the director did? Did you notice who the director was? And I don't think we started mentioning the director right away until Aron kept bringing it up and mentioning it. And I think I remember Aron saying we should mention the director every time, and the writers as well, because he was always interested in that kind of stuff. He was always interested in the shots and who is this and who is that. So maybe that's why I don't remember Paul Lynch's name. Is probably because maybe I wasn't reading off who the director was in the first and second seasons.
Yeah, you're right. We didn't. As a matter of fact, one thing that I noticed along that same vein was the first episode, the pilot episode, was written by Rick Berman and Michael Piller. And I don't remember seeing Rick Berman, his name come up again as with a story by credit other than the pilot episode.
Right. They were just always created by kind of stuff.
Right.
But then seemed to be a little bit more hands off. Now, Michael Piller wrote the script for this next one, episode 5, Captive Pursuit. And I don't know if he wrote that many, but this might be again that we didn't mention it the first couple seasons. But Michael Piller wrote this one. For the first time, an alien comes from the other side of the wormhole. He has ship trouble and seems very reluctant to accept any help. Chief O'Brien quickly finds out he has a secret. I believe, yes, this is with Tosk and Hunter of Tosk. To me, one of the most memorable first season episodes, maybe second most memorable or third, because it's so clear. We remember Tosk, played by Scott McDonald, who was also in the Voyager pilot as some lieutenant or something. And he's the guy, he's just got like this full scale, like, reptilian mask, and he's being chased by a similar looking alien, but it's more pale faced rather than greenish, yellowish. And O'Brien tries to help him, and Tosk basically says, hey, my whole DNA is to be the hunted. This is what I want to be. This is what I am. And O'Brien's basically like, okay, Godspeed. But that was a fun one. I don't know if you remember it too well, but that was one that stuck with me for sure.
Yeah, I do remember that. It's along the lines of just, like accepting who somebody is. And, it's like he didn't want any help. He didn't want it to be changed. He's saying, this is who I am, essentially. And so, yeah, I do remember that. And this is also essentially, even with with a few of these previous episodes that we're talking about, these stories of morality are popping up, right? Of what to do in situations, or what's right or what's wrong, or should I intervene or not intervene? And so we started to get these kinds of stories that became very indicative of what Deep Space Nine is all about.
Yeah, very early on, they were already starting with these, which was great.
Right.
The next one on the other side of that spectrum was called Q-less. Q, the Enterprise D's consistent omnipotent annoyance, comes to harass, or as Picard would say, Harris. I don't know if he said Harris, but it seems like he would. The Deep Space Nine crew when his traveling companion, Vash, refuses to travel with Q any longer. So this was kind of fun because we see Vash again, and we see Q, and he gives the famous line, "You hit me. Picard never hit me." And Sisko says, "I'm not Picard." So that was a fun one. That's a very famous scene right there among Star Trek fans.
Yeah, this one doesn't jump out as something that's so memorable for me.
Paul Lynch directed it, and the time I was talking about was when Q and Sisko were boxing. He set up like an old time boxing match, like, "Hey, come on, you!" That was the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, not a ton to say about that one. That was more, I feel like, a nod for Next Generation fans to see some old favorites, you know? The next one, speaking of favorites, is Dax. Jadzia Dax is accused of murder that her previous host, Curzon, supposedly committed. Director David Carson. This was an interesting one because we get our first real glimpse into her past lives, Jadzia's past lives, and what a Trill is with a symbiont.
Yes, we do. And again, we get into this idea about whether you're responsible for something that someone did in the past, even if that someone is kind of you. But it became this gray area about what was the right thing to do in the way of the Trill, right? Because she had the symbiont inside her, because that symbiont was responsible, Curzon was responsible for this murder. Was she therefore punishable for that, even though she's a separate being?
Which is a totally different situation. We've never run into that for obvious reasons. But that's one of the great things about Star Trek is they present something you have never thought about. Sometimes they present something as an allegory to something else, but sometimes they're just like, here's a morality play, and it's kind of a Rorschach test. It's kind of like how you view it is more a reflection of who you are as a person, more so than a reflection of the actual person or situation that you're talking about. It's a really interesting one.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's no really opportunity to talk about this. I guess you talk about it now in the sense of whether people's ancestors, whether you have to pay for your ancestral mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And people's descendants should or should not be accountable for those things. And so those kinds of debate are made today in that kind of a way about responsibility and slavery, for example. But they used it in this sense with somebody who has a symbiont inside of them. And I thought it was a very interesting discussion for, what is right and what is wrong, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Before we go to our break, I knew I was going to forget to mention this, but episode 6, though this previous episode, Mark Zicree was our guest, writer-producer Mark Zicree. He's written a couple episodes for Deep Space Nine. Of course, he got a writing credit on Far Beyond the Stars. He also wrote Next Generation episode First Contact, which is a very memorable one for me. Riker becomes a Malkorian. And episode 4, our guest was the one and only Quark himself, Armin Shimmerman. So that was the first time Armin graced our show, and we were better humans because of it. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the rest of season 1 on the other side. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 7th Row of Cirroc, Lofton.
Yeah, hello.
Deep Space Nine, season 1, you know what we're doing. Let's keep this train moving. This train, by the way, that was created and conceptualized by Aron Eisenberg, the coolest guy ever.
Yes, our guy. And also, I wanted to add really quickly about Paul Lynch, because a little background for some of the episodes he did for Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
He also directed The First Duty, The Naked Now.
That's, great ones.
Unnatural Selection, and A Matter of Time.
Mm-hmm. So the first duty was actually when Chief O'Brien changed his first diaper. And
oh, wow.
No, The First Duty is a great one. That is a Starfleet Academy one at the Japanese Garden that we know and will be visiting. That one is really good. It's with Wesley Crusher. It's also the character that Tom Paris was based off of. Voyager's Tom Paris, played by Robert Duncan McNeil. His character, Thomas Locarno, was introduced in that episode. And The Naked Now was like the second episode of Next Generation series, which was kind of almost an exact play of an original series episode as well, which was a really strange thing to do, but familiar for Star Trek fans. Anyway, so The Passenger was episode 8. It states Rao Vantika, a captured criminal, is badly burned and died in Bashir's arms, but the criminal's captor believes he is still alive. This was also directed by Paul Lynch. God, he is everywhere. Let's see. James Harper plays Vantika. So this was, I barely remember any of this.
I know, it's crazy. I have to look this up because I barely remember it.
Mm-hmm. His famous quote was, "Make me live." I vaguely remember this one. God, it was 3 years ago. I vaguely remember it. And right now the Star Trek fans are like, of course, it's the one where he does this and does that. We're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure I remember that.
Yeah, I can't. It's very hard for me to remember it. All I kept thinking was, "I just died in your arms tonight."
It must have been something you said. Yeah. He says "moosed." I don't know why instead of "must." Anyway, so
Paul Lynch again, all over this one. The guy's been around for years. He's part of directing Moonlighting. Old school stuff. He's been around for many years. Murder, She Wrote. Prior to his involvement with Star Trek.
There's no nog in this episode, so maybe we just flew through it. We're like, whatever. Maybe we're just in a big hurry to get to episode 9, which is one of the most legendary episodes in Star Trek history. It was so bad initially that everybody, said it was terrible. And then a funny thing happened where Star Trek fans eventually start to love the terrible episodes, like Move Along Home or like Voyager's Threshold. And it becomes like this inside joke where they're like, I like Move Along Home. I like until they start kind of convincing themselves. And now we all actually truly love these episodes. And Move Along Home was the one that killed me, when there's this weird guy that's making the crew of Deep Space Nine go through these games. And that's like their first contact, the way of communicating. And he makes a few of them do that hopscotch dance where they're like, 1, 2, whatever, and 3, 4. And Kira is doing the hopscotch thing. And it's the funniest thing I've ever seen, because she's jumping and dancing and chanting this little song with a scowl on her face. Like, she looks truly miserable. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah, well, I remember Avery saying that this is one episode that he wished he could take back.
Oh, nice.
And if he could not do it, he he would not do this episode. He hated that Alan Murray. I think it was Alan Murray.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Alan
Murray.
He hated that. Yeah, he hated that whole hopscotch routine, and he would. He regret. That's his one regret from this show, from this series, was this episode and that scene. At least that scene.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, it's memorable, right? So
yeah, but it's funny because here it says also that that Jake is starting to learn about Bajoran girls from his friend Nog. So there's a little bit of that in this episode.
Nice. So real quick, this is Kira's face when she's doing the dance. She's just like,
oh god.
Yeah, this is the one, right?
Everybody hated that shit.
Yeah, everybody was miserable. Anyway, so I could talk about Move Along Home forever, and I think most Star Trek fans could too, but we have to move along.
And this is a Michael Piller story, so he actually wrote this.
That's hilarious.
And it was directed by David Carson, who did the pilot episode. So, they're not always home runs, but as long as you swing the bat.
They ended up being a home run 25 years later. There's just a delay. The next one is The Negus, directed, by the way, by another David Livingston. The Ferengi leader, Grand Negus Zek, comes to the station. He seems very interested in Quark's bar. I believe this is when we were introduced to Grand Negus. Zek, played by Wallace Shawn, who famously touched Major Kira on the thigh, and she's like, "Get your hand off my thigh." He goes, "Oh, how did that get there?"
That's exactly how he said it. Wow.
Gotta love the Grand Negus, though, right?
Yeah. Just the Ferengi in general, they're starting to build out on this Ferengi storyline here. This is kind of the beginnings of them kind of expanding on that culture and showing us even more of, how they work culturally, what the Grand Negus is, and how, they all have to pay homage. So this is an expansion of Ferengi culture, and which we'll get a lot more of, hopefully, to come.
Mm-hmm. The next one was Vortex, a man that reminds me of Artex from the Neverending Story. Do you remember that horse that died in like the marsh of sorrow or the quicksand of sorrow? Anyway, and he's like, Artex. Anyway, saddest moment.
No, I don't remember.
So Vortex, a man named Croden, tells Odo he can take him to a place where aliens, much like Odo himself, exist, which would help Odo find out where he truly comes from. This is directed by Weinrich Colby. I think this was the first one where he pops up. Cliff DeYoung plays Croden, and his name just seems so familiar that I feel like he played other things in Star Trek. Do you remember this episode?
Not much.
Yeah.
Not really.
I'm really trying to know. See, he only played that one character in Star Trek. I'll have to figure out what it is I know him from, because I definitely recognize that name. This was not one of the most memorable episodes, which, can't always be a bad thing, because maybe that means it just wasn't bad, but it is rated fairly high on IMDb. It gets a 7, which is average for most of these. It's a little bit more about the storyline. A Mindarin ship, I do remember hearing about the Mindarins, has arrived with the brothers Kel and Kel. Okay, yeah, I do remember that. Known as smugglers, and a mysterious individual, Croden, has been spending quite a lot of time in Quark's bar. I think I'm going to want to just go back to our review of this episode afterwards and watch this, because I'll bet you this was one where Aron had a lot of interesting observations, because Aron Eisenberg, of course, our brother, always had some really interesting things to say. And I feel like if I remember this episode a little bit less, that means he was probably carrying the conversation more, because he was the one that found more interesting insights to pick up on or to discuss.
Right.
So I'm going to want to look back at that one for sure. The next one was, did you have something?
No, not so much. I mean, I'm seeing images of it. It's just not one of those things that left some kind of an impression on me.
Yeah.
But I'd have to go back and refer to the podcast episode that we did with Aaron. So
yeah. So the next one is Battle Lines. After showing Bajorn's spiritual leader, Kai Opaka, the wormhole, she, Sisko, Bashir, and Kira crash land on a moon. Kai Opaka dies, and the three meet unfriendly locals. Do you remember? I think that was the second or third episode with Kai Opaka, and this is the one in which she dies. Now, we remember her. She was nice. She was the friendly Kai. She was the one that we liked. And her death opened the door for everybody knows Kai Wynn. You remember Kai Opaka pretty well, right?
Of course, yeah. I do. And she was the likable one. She's actually the one that initially essentially declared Sisko to be the emissary, if I'm not mistaken. It was her.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so correct. She had the eye. She had the golden eye. She understood what was what, and she didn't seem to be corrupted by her power in the same way that her replacement would eventually be.
Yeah, we miss you, Kai Opaka. Let me just pull her up real quick just to give her the proper send-off she deserves. There she is.
There she is.
God, she was so much nicer than the one who shall not be named.
What's the actress's name that played her? I want to make sure we give her a...
Yeah, her name is Camille Saviola. Camille Saviola.
Okay.
Sounds Italian. Now, the next episode, The Storyteller. This one was not received too well from the viewers that voted on it for IMDb or rated it. While Sisko tries to negotiate an agreement between two Bajoran factions, he orders O'Brien to escort Bashir to investigate an emergency that endangers the village. Oh boy, the village is in danger. We forgot to mention, by the way, we moved too fast through these. Vortex, 2 episodes ago, Vortex, we did have a special guest, and that was Hana Hate, because I think this may have been her first or second appearance on the show. Hana Hate came in, and we're like, what was it like when you were 2.5 years old and you said this line? She's like, I think it was fine. I don't know. And then the next episode, which was Battle Lines, we had Tracy Coco as our guest, who played Lieutenant J in like dozens and dozens of episodes of Next Generation. She played a bunch of different aliens on several shows and movies. So she was our guest for Battle Lines. I think maybe she played a Cobarian or something in that episode. But anyway, I don't know if there's much to say about the Storyteller, but rather than telling stories about that, let's progress to the next episode, which is Progress. Season 1, Episode 14, Progress. Kira must convince an old Bajoran farmer to leave a moon becoming uninhabitable due to mining operations. Yeah. Jake,
I remember this episode.
Me too. It's funny how some just really stick out at you and others just don't. Jake and Nog try to trade off Cardassian yamok sauce. Well, what's that all about? What storyline could be the yamok sauce storyline? Well, it's this one, everybody. Everybody knows they're screaming it at their screen right now. It's the self-sealing stem bolts episode. Oh boy.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah. I've got a million self-sealing stem bolts in my garage and I can't find a buyer. I'm like, $10, dude.
What you do is you trade it for yamok sauce.
Yeah. But that's you and Aaron talked a million times about that episode, about how it took you like 19 takes to say self-sealing stem bolts in that one scene. I think you said it was 19.
This is Les, directed by Les Landau.
Yep.
Sorry, Les. We gave him some early gray hairs for this one.
Yeah, and
but
then
sometimes you just get mode.
And the other side of that was that old Bajoran farmer. We do remember that, and he ends up staying, if I remember correctly. And that was one of those things that is a different ending. That Deep Space Nine came up with some different endings than Next Generation. Next Generation, you expect, the good guys to win, the old person to be saved, the thing to be done, And Deep Space Nine sometimes gave us kind of a failure, like it didn't happen the way we wanted. But that also made really good stories, and it made us, think, and it made the episode stand out more a lot of times that way.
Yeah. I also remember that it's eventually we traded for a piece of land, if I'm not mistaken, after going through all of the trading.
Yeah.
And then Nog thought the land was worthless until somebody decided that it wasn't worthless and that they needed that land.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually made a good deal on that. Eventually, it turned out to be okay.
Yeah, look at this guy too. Everybody listening in, I'm pulling up this really cool alien here. Look at this guy. What is that? Why didn't they use him again? This guy's great.
Yeah, that's a reuse. That's a reuse right there. That's a great alien.
Yeah.
And what about that lime green? I could have wore that a couple more times.
Man,
I like that lime green.
I call that outfit the puzzle piece. That's the puzzle piece one because, right? Yeah. It looks like you got it looks like they put you together.
Yeah, Lego man.
Anyway, that is one of the most famous and memorable episodes ever, especially for us seventh rulers. Let's see. The next episode was If Wishes Were Horses. This would have been a great one to have Hanahate join us, because I believe this was the one with Rumpelstiltskin. And if you'll recall, initially they were going to make it a leprechaun, but I think it was a column that says, that's kind of a racist thing to say, that like an Irish guy and an Irish family would see a leprechaun. so that's why they changed it to Rumpelstiltskin. It was going to be a leprechaun initially, which is funny. But do you remember that
with his
one?
Lucky Charms?
Yeah.
Oh, were me Lucky Charms.
Do you remember that one though? Like, right? There was that.
Oh yeah, I remember it because the Rumpelstiltskin was actually super creepy looking.
Yes, exactly.
And if I was Hannah's age, I would have totally had nightmares for the ride. I'd be permanently scarred from that Rumpelstiltskin episode.
There he is.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like creepy a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That toddler wasn't the only one creeped out by that makeup job there. So anyway, that was a good one though. That was one of the, a much more memorable episode of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
The next one was The Forsaken. Lwaxana Troi comes for a political visit and instead hounds Odo for romantic attention. Meanwhile, an alien probe wreaks havoc with the station's computer, leaving Odo and Lwaxana trapped together. So I've read that that Lwaxana was going to be much more of a recurring character initially. They planned for her to be much more recurring, like a Garrick or like a Nog or something like that, or Rom. But it just didn't work out that way. She only ended up doing like 2 or maybe 3 episodes. But this was the one, I think it was her first appearance here. And this is where they set up that little situation with her and Odo.
Yeah, I remember how uncomfortable Odo was in that elevator with her, or at least how uncomfortable he portrayed himself to be.
Yeah,
and I thought that was that was believable from my perspective of his performance there. I think that we also learned that he had to go into a liquid form at every so often in that episode.
I think we knew that, but this was the first time that we were shown, and they expanded on it. And I think maybe she even like held him in her dress or something. There was something like that where he just kind of started melting or whatever, It
started melting. Yeah, something like that.
And they shared a moment.
Yeah, they shared a liquid moment.
Would have been interesting. It would have been interesting if Loxana were a bigger part of the show. The direction the show went, I can see how it didn't really mesh as well. So maybe it's for the best, but it would have been interesting to see how they do that. We have 3 more episodes.
I think they could have made her more dynamic of a character. I think they made her just so one-dimensional as far as, just pursuing Odo. She wasn't really defined as a dynamic character with her own individual personality so much. They didn't give her that much layer. So I think contextually, there was no room for her to go anywhere, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, they're writers. They're brilliant at what they do. They would have worked it out, but I can see how it's not a natural fit, for sure. It's not a natural fit. The direction that the show ended up going, maybe the direction the show was going to go initially totally fits, but the direction it ended up going, I mean, what's she going to do with Damar and Wei-Yun? It doesn't really fit. But they would have worked it out, I'm sure. So we have 3 more episodes, but it looks like we're going to be doing those on the free-for-all, everybody. So the free-for-allers are going to get to jump in on those final 3 episodes. So everybody stick around for that. And before we go to the free-for-all, we would like to give a very special thanks to a few people known as Homer Frizzell in Walter Koenig's old apartment building in New York City, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, Tim Baum, a.k.a. Grandpa One, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill, Victor Arucan, Darlena Marie, Titus Mohler, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Anna Post, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Polat, Dr. Frank Soboczenski, Patrick David Lindsley, Joe Balsarati, and of course, to know her is to love her, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. All right, everybody, stick around for the free-for-all, and we'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Here we go. It's the free-for-all. Joining us today, Malissa Longo.
Hi.
Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here. Homer Frizzell is here wearing his coolest headphones and cool jacket.
It looks like an Aron jacket.
Yeah.
Puffy black Aron jacket. He had one just like that.
TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri is also here wearing an awesome Chat Pack shirt. Melissa, by the way, is wearing a cool 7th Rule shirt. You can find both those on our Teespring store.
I did this too.
Ooh, that's a good one. Is that a walking art made by Melissa.com?
Yes, it is.
Very nice. Very nice.
DJ, yours is coming.
Does she have the Gorn?
Yeah.
Yes.
We also have Eve England out in Wales.
Oh, with the new Emissary kiosk design shirt.
No way. Is that what that is?
Oh,
Hang on,
nice.
let's see this. Wow.
Gorgeous.
Wow.
That's so pretty.
Everybody, you can get that at AbyssinianKiosk.com. All of these links are in the description box below, so you can check those out. Goldie Scott is here. Good old GDS.
Hey.
We have Anil O. Polat, maybe in Guatemala. I don't know.
I am still.
In Guatemala,
Yeah.
nice.
What did you eat today? I'm sorry. Sorry.
I went to a farm and they made all the food from the farm ingredients that they had grown. So it was pretty cool.
Wow,
but
nice.
it's going to be difficult to answer the question, have you visited a farm during your travels? So I have not.
Okay, we also have Tierney C. Dieckmann here, not on a farm today. We have Grandpa One out in space, aka Tim Baum, and Dr. Marie Segal, finally back home in New York.
I know. And I'm wearing a nice roll shirt, friendly
cool.
eyes. And like Eve, my walking art made by Melissa Deep Space Nine bracelet.
Wow. Awesome stuff. So before we talk about Deep Space Nine Season 1 as a whole, let's finish going through the final 3 episodes. Episode 17 is Dramatis Personae. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
My least favorite episode, yes.
The entire station's command staff, save Odo, become power.
Hey, Ryan, did you introduce Tim? I
Yes.
don't know if you did. I was
Yeah,
yes,
Grandpa
did.
one.
All right.
Yeah.
I think so.
Making sure.
The entire station's command staff save Odo, become power hungry, and vie to defeat each other by forming secret alliances and plotting assassinations. Odo tries to figure out the cause of this mysterious behavior. The director is Cliff Bowl. Anne-Marie, can you tell us why this is your least favorite episode?
Oh, it just seems like really thrown together, and it just doesn't make sense. And I don't know. Sometimes Voyager gets these episodes early on too, where you're just like, "What is even the point? What does this mean?" Everybody like gets in a fight. It's like a very, but then like it concludes with just like, oh yeah, I'm with Kira. TJ, yeah, I know. Who are you sided with?
I'm not telling you.
It's not my favorite because like it's just like stressful and there are no fun moments and I never really understand it.
It's fun just to go around and see who's with Kira and who's with Sisko. Like Cirroc, we know like he's probably split about this. He wants to be with Kira, but Sisko's his dad. So who you with, Cirroc?
That's because they got infected by that virus that didn't infect Odo.
Right.
Which is why he had to save everyone. But we did get Sisko's cool clock out of it.
That's true.
Yeah, but did we ever get to see that clock again?
Yes.
Yes. It's in his office.
There it is.
Yeah, where's that clock?
It's in his office, and it was when Odo / I forgot his name in the episode walks past Sisko's window in Far Beyond the Stars. You see it on the desk in the window.
Cool.
Oh wow.
Cirroc, how well do you remember this?
Well, not much. A little bit. I remember being in love with Kira, but that's an easy sell for me.
Consistent.
Yeah.
He's secretly with Kira. I knew it.
Yeah. You know it. You know it, TJ. But I did want to say something about Cliff Bowl, which I found interesting. So he did direct episodes of The $6 Million Man, Baywatch, MacGyver, and the X-Files. But he also did the pilot episode of T.J. Hooker.
Nice.
Starring William Shatner.
Wow.
He also directed 3 episodes of Spencer for Hire, which starred Avery Brooks.
Yeah.
And he also directed 15 episodes of Fantasy Island with Ricardo Montalban.
There we go.
Montalban. So,
also known as the Chest.
Yes. So he has his connection kind of into a lot of Star Trek actors through other shows as well. So I think that's pretty interesting.
That was a lot of good stuff. TJ, just to make sure, what's your middle name?
Not Hooker.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
Not name. Not Hooker.
All right. Then we've got basically the one episode that everybody wants to talk about in season 1, which is Duet. A Cardassian suffering from Kala Nora, a disease that indicates he served in a labor camp, visits Deep Space Nine. Kira is determined to convict him as a war criminal. We had Nana Visitor join us for our review. that episode. That was her first time joining our show. And of course, she was amazing talking about it. And myself, Cirroc, and Aron were just mystified by the episode and by her performance and by, God, why can I never remember the Yulin? What's Harris Yulin?
Yeah.
His performance was amazing. Cirroc, how well do you remember this one?
This one is obviously one of the best episodes of the series
Ever. Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty much a great story with amazing performances. And it just this episode makes me think of how spectacular Nana Visitor was during this time period in 1993. She was such a formidable leading woman in television. And I feel like even to this day, she hasn't really gotten the kind of proper dues for the amount of work that she did at the level that she did it. So this is an example of it. And I think that, she was one of the cast members that really stole the show in this first season and just brought such a level of intense energy that she was a force to be reckoned with. So that's what I remember about it.
Yeah, I remember you saying that a few times in that first season. You would say, this feels like, to Nana, you said it, this feels like it's your show in this first season.
Yeah.
She really stood out, the character and the actress.
Yeah.
And Aron loved it. Aron loved the out of it. Melissa, do you remember Aron talking about this at all? Like, did you watch it with him when he was preparing for this? Did you?
Yeah. Well, and then we talked about it, and he said, how amazing is it, because he cried, how amazing is it to get an episode that moves you to tears in the first season? And he's like, this is a wonderful, wonderful marker for this show. So he loved this episode. Loved it. Yeah.
How did you feel about it? Do you love it too, or?
Of course I love it. I'm Team Kira, so of course I love it. And for all of the reasons Cirroc says. One, it's a wonderfully written character, well-rounded. It's layered. She's got depth. She's flawed, but she's also got integrity and heart. And Nana is a phenomenal actor. She's a master of her craft, and it's always a pleasure to watch her work. I would watch her read the phone book if they still existed.
That is a long thing to watch.
Wow. I'm actually curious. I'm actually curious what the IMDb score is for this episode, because
I think it's a 9.0.
One of the highest.
We weren't doing it at this time.
Right.
Is it a 9?
I think it was
a 9.
9.0. Yes, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean,
higher.
Yeah, you look at, you look at In the Pale Moonlight, 9.5, right? And you look at Far Beyond the Stars, I think it was a 9.4, 9.3. I mean, I don't know if Duet is that much worse than those. I feel like it's almost up there, it's higher. Maybe 9.2, 9.3 up there, right?
Totally. I'd also argue that Progress should be rated like way higher than this.
Self-sealing stem bolts up episode.
Yeah, but it's also sort of like the sister show in the season for like the more serious plot line with Kira. So it's just on IMDb, and it's like shocking how low some of them are. So obviously I tend it. And also it's such a beautiful episode. Like, I know, not to interrupt, but it's such a good, beautiful. I think like Nana said in some interviews, like sometimes the Holocaust survivors she would meet at, especially like European conventions, have like mentioned to her how much this episode means to them, and especially relevant on Yom HaShoah today, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day. So I always watch this episode every year on this day. So good.
Very good. Good point.
Grandpa One is nodding vehemently. Do you have anything to add to Duet? How much did you love it? One of the best episodes ever?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it, especially first season, there was a handful of episodes the first season that started to set the tone for the rest of the show. And Duet was an episode that made you think, okay, this show's going to be different. It really was a very intense episode. You know, you mentioned the Holocaust, but that in some of the people, Germans that I talked to who survived, have felt so much guilt for the rest of their lives because of what happened. So yeah,
and it's hard to find things that get to that on like how the Germans feel who lived through that and were forced to do things. Yeah. Like, oh, the show just captured it so beautifully. And like one last thing, a lot of times it's like very hard to watch like actual shows and things about and movies that are set with the Holocaust just because it's so visceral and real. But then Deep Space Nine, it just like has the ability, and this is one of the great examples, like it allows you to be able to think about it and watch it without like overwhelming your senses so that you can't watch it. It's important.
That's a good point. It makes it a little bit more digestible.
Yes.
Well, this is kind of an open question. I was going to say, does anybody else have any thoughts on Duet? But I bet everybody does. So I think we all do. If anybody has any thoughts on it, feel free to toss them out before we go to the final episode.
I have the script.
What?
Just sitting there, yeah.
Talk about burying the lead here.
Just right there.
Is it one of those scripts that kind of has like some notes on it or anything like that?
No, unfortunately, it's the final version, and it was owned by somebody who, I think, a camera person, maybe.
Wow!
I got it on on eBay, but that's one of the few that I have. That I have Emissary too, but Duet is. I haven't read it, but I was just looking at the end page where, the final line. He's a Cardassian. That's reason enough.
Mm-hmm. You have got to read that script.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Anybody else?
I've just something. It's more my memory of the Seventh Rule episode.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that this is the one that I was listening to for Vegas. Flying out in 2019. And so Aaron had the Discord set up and it was only recording his voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to hear what's going on when it's just one person. But there was a lot of, that's very interesting. And so it was encouraging people to share more. I didn't get anything about the episode from that one side, but still, it was memorable for that. It was fun.
How did I forget that moment?
That was so funny because he did that for a few episodes where Discord was just connected to his microphone. And so people were just listening in to him saying, all right, we got a couple minutes before we record. All right, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. It's like, I don't really know what's going on, but I know he's getting coffee. Oh, that's excellent knowledge.
I remember
all right.
that.
So the final episode was In the Hands of the Prophets.
Okay.
Which is... I think that was that Sue? Vedic Wynn. Oh boy.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Starts her treachery.
Kiss Cirroc's face.
Yep. Vedic Wynn, a candidate in the race for the open Kai position, stirs up trouble on Deep Space Nine when she attempts to boycott Keiko's school for not teaching Bajoran religious beliefs. And so this is our introduction into our friend. You're right.
Is this relevant or what?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
When we mentioned
Abrams
Lynn, Cirroc's face looks like he just sucked on a lemon. He's just like...
Yeah.
She was making it hard for him to go to school, man. He just wanted to go learn.
He was making it hard for everyone to go to school. about forcing your beliefs on other people.
Yeah, this wasn't the episode where Jake was teaching Nog. That was earlier in the season, right? I don't remember exactly which one that was.
Jump sticks are being shared and not shared with like Keiko's like, careful who you share your jump sticks with, Miles. Which is such a cute moment. But yeah, it's so
cute.
Wow. If I ever have to tell my future husband anything, like stay away from, that's how I'm going to phrase it.
And you think Shatner will take that well?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think it was progress. I think it was progress.
Progress was the No J Consortium episode.
Yeah, I think it might have been the one where
I think it's
Keiko first introduces the school. Was it that one?
No,
it was before that.
After. No, he was teaching him how to read after. I feel like.
Yeah, I think it was after too, but I don't remember what. That was the B plot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. Anyway, so in the Tears of the Prophets.
Sorry, it's the Negus, episode 10, I guess.
Oh, gotcha.
This was also directed by David Livingston. We get some Keiko and some Kai Wynn.
Vedic Wynn.
Sorry, you're right. Vedic Wynn.
We're not going to give her the promotion early.
So that was season 1. It was all in 1993. It started on January 3rd. It went all the way through the first half of the year. So overall, Cirroc, before we close the book on season 1, way before we close the book on season 2, do you have any final thoughts? You know, obviously Duet was the standout. I can't remember, what was the one with Alan Moraine?
Move along home.
Right.
I tend that.
That one's a standalone. That one stands out for different reasons.
It stands out, all right.
It gets better and better every time.
The premiere, Emissary, that was one of my favorite.
Yes.
It's so fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Emissary.
Oh yeah, wasn't that?
Took the words right out of my mouth. Sue, I was about to say, and don't forget, the pilot was phenomenal.
Best pilot, I think.
Best pilot all Star Trek. Yep. I did like Progress as well. That was another good Kira episode when she's on the moon trying to get the guy out of the house.
Yeah.
And she's got to choose between her two. Yeah.
Yes.
Love that
that's
episode.
a great Kira development episode too.
What do you think, Cirroc?
I liked that.
With Anne Haney.
Cirroc, what do you got on this? What do you have on this first season before we do a quick run around the corner?
I think that the first season really set up the characters very well. They gave us enough of a backstory, enough diverse characters. They started on their storylines, and I think that as a foundation, we really got to know a lot of people like Garrick and Jake, Nog, Sisko, everybody, Kira. I mean, we just got to learn who everybody was. And I think as the story moves along, we get deeper and deeper into... we start... I think they start getting deeper and deeper into trying to tell these other stories. So first they're establishing the characters, and then they start telling other stories about, occupation and about these kinds of moral stories that they get into. But I think they started off great on the right foot. As soon as they started in the pilot episode, they gave us Sisko as the emissary, which added a whole nother kind of dynamic, setting the stage for essentially the rest of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And the tensions between the Cardassian and Bajoran and all of this stuff that they laid down in this first season really starts to bubble up, and the ingredients are there for whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish in Deep Space Nine. I think it's a great start for a show.
Yeah. And I'm definitely going to go back and watch every one of our review episodes just so I can soak up more Aron.
Yeah,
because
more Aron and Cirroc before he had watched all of Deep Space Nine. It's really fun.
It's fun to see.
It's just so. Oh my gosh, those
Cirroc
episodes.
was a little bit more lost watching
in the
like he was
way.
like this innocent babe, right? Where he's like, oh, now he's an old pro with it.
It's really special. And it's also really sweet when Aron mentions, like, every time, well, I was watching it with my wife, Melissa, and she said,
oh my goodness,
and it's just, those are the sweetest moments in the reviews. So, oh my God, I can't recommend it more. It's insane that every Star Trek fan isn't, like, out there watching them all constantly.
Every real Star Trek fan is.
We're going to make it happen.
It's so, they're just total platinum.
Well, Malissa Longo, can you give us your 3 favorite episodes of season 1? And you can't mention Move Along Home more than once.
You can do that 3 times.
I think I'm going to say The Emissary, Progress, and Duet are my 3 favorite.
Progress because of the self-sealing stem bolts?
No, that's a bonus. That's a bonus. 19 takes. Yes, those are my 3. And to piggyback off of what Anne-Marie was saying, I have been listening while I work to the podcast, the first season of The 7th Rule. And I just have to say the discussions, the conversations between Aron and Cirroc and Ryan are just incredible. You all 3 have such wonderful insights into these episodes, and it's wonderful to hear you discuss your different points of views and in such a positive and reassuring way, which is, it's great and honest. It can't, you don't blow sunshine up our asses to make it, it's honest stuff. And there's real love for this show and deservedly so. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Melissa. And by the way, everybody, Melissa watched these episodes intently for us to be able to cut out good Aron clips last September when we were posting all of those clips of fun Aron times and interesting quips that he made or interesting conversation pieces that he started. And there were so many that we still have some left over. So stay tuned for that. And thanks, Melissa, for doing that. Dr. Susan V. Gruner, what are your 3 favorites?
Oh, and I'm going through them. I'm looking at them. Definitely Duet, Emissary. I don't have just 3.
That was 2.
I know, but I can.
The rest are tied for their place.
I'm scrolling through them, and I'm thinking I like all of these except for Move Along Home.
Hey,
they'll come around
eventually.
Yeah, no, I think this. If you asked me or asked us what your favorite first of all the Star Trek iterations, who had the best first season, I say it's Deep Space Nine. I think this is the best first season.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much introduction, character growth. In that first season, more than as much as I love Voyager, it just wasn't like this. And certainly not the new ones. I don't think there's any character development, but very little. But this is, to me, the very pinnacle of a first season of a show, where you really get to know the characters right out of the box, right out of the first episode.
Wormhole.
And it actually is only 6 episodes longer, 5 or 6 episodes longer than like a Discovery season 1 or something. Because people always also cite, well, all of old Star Trek has like 26 episodes per season. like this one didn't. So,
right. Well, season 1 of Discovery, I think, had 16 episodes. So it only had 3
so
episodes
actually,
more. You're right. Yeah.
They were similar. It's not even a real viable comparison, point to make.
Right. Well, and British television manages to get around these smaller seasons too.
Yeah, I hate that.
And they put years between seasons as well over there.
Episodes.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. But they don't skimp on the character development.
Nope.
Right. There's fewer episodes.
Right.
Well, speaking of British television, Galdu Scott, what are your 3 favorite?
There's some British television right there. There he is.
Yeah.
There's the Doctor. It's my favorite.
Doctor. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
My 3 favorite episodes in this is we should say our favorite episodes besides Emissary and Duet. That would make it harder.
Yeah.
As Emissary and Duet are on there. I really love Captive Pursuit because I love that Tosk story.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want him back one day. I'm obsessed with Tosk. I don't know what it is. The more I watch, every time I like it even more.
Awesome.
It was the first really heavy O'Brien story too since he moved over to DS9.
Yeah.
So it was like he got to be a little bit more surly and a little bit more than what we just saw him, over there on Enterprise, just beating people in and out. Kind of looking sad, but I really do like Progress too. I think I'm just going to have to copy Moise's list because that is such a great Kira story, and it's a story on a planet. People are complaining, and I hear some online about the new season of Picard, and people are complaining it's not in space, it's on the planet, but Kira pulls this off in this little hut in this whole episode. Yeah. Of course, you got the B plot going on the station, but I mean, you've just got straight up character development, dialogue, and storytelling between a character we haven't seen yet and we never see again after that episode.
Yeah.
And just beginning, middle, and end. It's just solid. And it shows Kira deciding she's got to go with her duty enough to set the guy's house on fire. Spoiler alert. At the end of it, just to get him out of there. I mean, I love those 3. I have a really funny story about last week at work. One of my coworkers said, "Hey man, I finally checked out that Star Trek show." He actually said Star Trek show. Yeah, nice. You guys talk about it. You talk about it all the time. And I was like, "Oh, cool. What episode was it, man?" He goes, "I don't remember, but it had the pretzel ear guy, and he was playing a game that the other people were stuck in."
Oh, Move Along Home.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He started with Move Along Home. And he was like, and I was like, "Holy shit, you started with what?"
Why would you do that?
Then he said, "Man, it was pretty damn good. I loved at the end when they were like, of course they're not going to kill you. It's just a game. Why would we do that? We're not.
It's not that bad."
And he's like, "That was awesome." So, hey, man, I said, "Man, it is all just going to be glorious from here on out."
It's all up there.
Straight out of the box.
Yeah. Oh my God, did he 10 it on IMDb like me?
You better get in there and 10 it. I'm going to tell him.
Get in there.
Tell him tomorrow.
Get at it, Adam.
Well, Eve England out in Wales, who may have seen some British television herself, probably. Do you have 3 favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine season 1?
I think apart from the obvious ones, I was just talking to James about it before we came on. I was like, I just don't think I do have a favorite. I think season 1 for me is as everyone's already said, it's all about the establishment of this frontier town. It's something that's so different to everything that had come before. You've got the architecture is different. The architecture of the show is just different. And I just think that, and I was going through the synopsis, and apart from the episodes that we've already talked about, I just couldn't remember any of it. And I was like, there's nothing hugely memorable about it, but what is memorable about it is how you do really feel for those characters from episode 1, and you just get that development throughout. And I just don't think the rest of the seasons and the rest of Deep Space Nine would be what it is without season 1. Whatever your criticisms are of the episodes compared to future ones, it just wouldn't exist without that, because those episodes were all so important in terms of the character relationships, which you just didn't really get, and you don't get in a lot of the other seasons. So, I just think it's collectively a really important season to establish the world building, the characters, and everything that comes after it. So I'm going to do a bit of a cop out.
When you say seasons, do you have to translate from British to English? Because I know you guys say series instead of seasons,
yeah,
right?
I do. And I do mix them up sometimes and struggle. Yeah.
Well done. Well done. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. By the way, I saw somebody wearing that exact fez hat somewhere.
This exact one. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, oh man.
I guess I shouldn't say that exact one. An identical one. Unless you're sharing it with some guy in LA.
No, that's great. Show me this guy when I get there in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a few favorites?
I am going to choose 3 episodes that probably no one else would mention, just because of that reason. Okay, so first, these are in no particular order. The episode Dax, where
she's on
trial for for something that happened in a past life. And to me, this episode, ranks up there with Measure of a Man as far as, defining, rights and establishing precedent on, can this person be held responsible for something that happened, as the host of an entity that was hosted in a different body at that time. So I found that interesting. And also Anne Haney is there and she's amazing. So added bonus there. My next episode is Battle Lines, which is an interesting episode to me because, it's kind of this ongoing battle, and, these people just continue to, hold this hatred until Kaiopaka, is forced to have to stay there. And she takes kind of this personal mission on herself to try to heal these people. And I just think that's kind of amazing, though I did not like losing Kaiopaka. I really liked her a lot since the first episode. Even, in 93, when I was watching it as a kid, I was like, I like this Kaiopaka. And now she's gone. And the next episode is The Storyteller. And, it's at first it's just kind of funny and ridiculous, but I like it because at the heart of the story is the idea that, a collective group of people kind of need to face their demons to be able to move on and kind of face down, quote unquote, this monster that's threatening society, which can represent so many things. And I think it's so relevant. But the base idea is that the people need to come together to be able to overcome what is threatening them. And that can be applied to a great many, I think, things in our very own society. So that's actually one of my favorite episodes. And plus, it's also really funny.
Wow.
As a bonus, I do want to kind of throw back that, I got to watch a little bit of the Emissary this morning. And that's obviously a favorite. I remember watching it like the day it came out. I was so excited.
Really?
And I was so excited to see Cirroc, Lofton's character, Jake Sisko. We were talking, started like I was 13, he's 13, kind of, there. And I really identified with the character right off the bat. Never imagined I'd be sitting here talking about it with Cirroc Lofton. So there's that.
Cool. That is too damn cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Day one.
So much love.
Day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the love is right back at you, TJ. And one other thing I forgot to add, but it was one of the things I enjoyed about this season as well is that it felt like we were watching the beginning of it as it started. So when Sisko gets commissioned to run DS9, it feels like that's the beginning of DS9 essentially becoming Deep Space Nine. And so we, instead of peering in on something as it already would happen, and kind of now we're just now being introduced to it, we're watching it grow and we're growing with it. So it's like, oh, first day on the promenade, not just for Sisko, but for us too as the audience. So we kind of grow with the show as we get introduced to these characters.
Mm-hmm. Perfect pilot. Speaking of perfect pilot, he has never crashed a plane ever. Homer Frizzell.
That's right, Ryan. You know me so well.
Do I lie?
No, you do not. You do not. Yeah, this is so. Everyone's covered Emissary and Duet, which I love. So I'm going to call out a couple that could bear another watch. Given that you know how it ends up, so you're watching it and you're like thinking about it. So I would say Move Along Home.
Yeah.
Because I want to watch I forget the name of the alien race.
Wadi.
Thank you. I want to watch the Wadi and see if there appears to be malice when they're talking about these bets and stuff, and they're like serious, but maybe they're just serious about their game. So I want to watch that again through that lens. And then the other one, it has high points and very low points. If Wishes Were Horses.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I especially like the baseball side of things. So I would like to see that part of it with Sisko and Buck Bokai. Yeah, I could leave Rumpelstiltskin.
But the way
he was so cute.
Molly said Rumpelstiltskin. So cute.
Okay, I'll watch that part too.
And the way he looks at O'Brien when O'Brien walks in is priceless. He's just like, here I am, see? I am real.
Yeah, and then
I just have to show I have that script too.
What?
Oh, geez.
Just burying all the leads today, Sue.
I think there's this scene there where it's like a huddle of these characters.
I don't. I have like 6. I have Emissary, Duet, Through the Looking Glass.
Man.
Good stuff.
They're on their way to Las Vegas to be signed.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Oh.
Okay.
Good stuff, Homer.
Oh, thanks.
Speaking of good stuff, Tierney C. Dieckmann is also here, everybody. And a dog, I think. Do you have a few favorites?
Oh, I mean, the obvious could go on for a long time about Duet, but there's just bits and pieces of so many of these episodes. I actually really love the interactions between Loxana and Odo in that episode, where she shows her vulnerability to him to get him to a place of safety. And I remember the first time seeing that as more of an adult, it actually was very helpful to me as a person of, releasing some of my own discomforts and things like that. And
Tierney, which one was that?
I don't remember off the top of my
not
head.
Season 1, I don't think.
No, it is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
With Loxana?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Loxana and Odo being trapped together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she takes off one of her wigs.
Yeah, love that. I love that.
This is what she looked fine. It said, "Baby, but it's ordinary," and relate to that too much.
She's not ordinary.
No, and it's hard to be that. But they're so
The Forsaken. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So many other bits, and then of course Jake teaching Nog to read, and I cannot tear up at that. But I didn't notice. I didn't think about it until going back and looking at this season. I mean, I've got all of the shows on repeat. Essentially, I get finished with the series and I restart all of the next gen eras, and I'll skip the first few seasons sometimes of Voyager and of next gen. I don't need to see the Kazon being knockoff trash Klingons and Neelix's character for some reason being
a car.
butthead of
I
Cat.
know, but car.
And I don't need to see the TNG TOS transition period of crew neck uniforms and code of honor, and we don't need that. But I don't think I have ever skipped over the first season of DS9, not once. And it's a really phenomenal first season. I almost couldn't get over it. I'm looking at them going over the synopsis of each episode, and damn, obviously we have Move Along Home, and Merone is a fever dream that I'll never be able to rid myself of.
Lucky,
but I'd rather watch The Thaw, 10 times over than hopscotch Alan Moraine.
That's a bold statement.
I think Anne-Marie is personally offended.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of surrealism, but there's a limit. But, and then we have Duet, which I think Anne-Marie said, it sets the tone so well. It does. I wish we had more Kaiopaka. I wish they hadn't taken her out so early that she could come back as a recurring to really kick the crap out of Kaiwin sometimes, even if it was just, in some sort of strange inner mind way, something like that we could have done. But it's just so great. They're hard to, you can't pick favorites.
Maybe they could my child each other to death. Like, oh, my child. Oh, don't my child me. You're my child.
Squeeze each other's ear the hardest.
Yeah, right.
Ear grab.
Her my child is Score, and her my child isn't Score. And yeah, there's obviously there's a few things that don't quite line up, some little plot holes, but overall things are consistent. The characters are there. And they are there. They don't change in these horrendously apparent ways after their introductions. And it's just great. Mm-hmm. It's really wonderful. It is. And yeah, everybody should catch up on the first parts of Seventh Rule with Aaron. The conversations are.
I know. I want to go back and watch these because Cirroc, it just feels like the good old days, doesn't it? Like it just, I miss those good old days.
Golden era.
But speaking of consistent and wonderful and great, Dr. Marie Segal, do you know anybody like that? No, I'm just kidding. Do you have? Do you have 3 favorite episodes?
Yeah, obviously Duet in Progress, especially because it introduces the No J Consortium. And the second I found out about Seventh Rule, I Patreoned it like 2 seconds after finding out about it because I saw that you got to be in a Facebook group called the No J Consortium if you became a member. And I was like, my life is complete. I've always wanted to be in this.
I love that you use Patreon as a verb.
Yeah.
I Patreoned it.
Yeah,
she
in
uses
like
10 as a
literally
verb
2
too.
seconds. I was like, let me sign up for that. And also, like as a little kid, I remember that storyline being like, wow, this is such a great show. And then, yeah, I'd say probably Dax is my other one that it's just so rewatchable and. It really developed. Dax is one of my favorites of all time. And it really starts developing her character a little bit. And also like, it's a great Odo episode. And I always love when you go to another planet and deal with their like legal system in Star Trek. Those are my favorites.
Their legal department.
Mm-hmm.
You mean like when people walk in the grass, Anne-Marie?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It always like,
Justice.
it's always, but it always is like a little bit weird and out there in a fun way. I like it. But unfortunately, I totally forgot that was season 1 because it seems so advanced. So that's my honorable mention because of Loxana.
Yeah, and that's the one where Dax and Bashir were trapped together, I think, too, right?
No, they're just. Isn't it only a turbolift trapped situation?
Mm-hmm. When were they trapped together? They were in the
small
first
ship,
season, too.
No, that's a different episode.
They're trapped in Not
they get trapped on the.
I feel like they get trapped together like 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just keep.
Was it that
I think
late?
we
on?
get it.
Wow.
Well, I think there is an
Yeah,
earlier
it
one,
was-
and then there's also If Wishes Were Horses, where he's sort of like with a different Dax and having private time. There were like a few times that it
It's
happened.
fantasy Dax and real Dax.
Oh yeah.
Both
Anyway.
physical entities at the same time.
I need to rewatch Deep Space Nine, basically.
Yes.
Grandpa One, number one Deep Space fan of all time. Do you have a few favorites of season one?
Well, I agree with Scott. I'm going to eliminate the ones that are obvious.
Move along home.
And, but well, actually, no. I did. There was one thing I liked about Move Along Home was it started to develop Quark's character, where he was panicking when he thought he killed everybody, and so he wasn't the hard ass that he wanted everybody to believe. But no, the first one would have to be Captive Pursuit, because that was, on a philosophy of moral issue, it was very intense. And it also, towards the end, set the tone of what Sisko was going to be like as a commanding officer. O'Brien thought he was getting away with it, and it's like Sisko's going, I let you get away with it, so we'll leave it at that. Then also Dax, because it brings up the whole issue, sins of the father.
Right.
And although, a little bit of a nitpick, I'm sure this couldn't have been the first time an issue with a Dax came up like that.
Yes.
After
that drives me crazy.
I mean, there had to have been some legal precedent set somewhere.
Yes.
Right. Good point.
And then for the third one would be Vortex, because I like it. Really started establishing Odo's character and his obsession with finding out where he came from, and generally it's one of my favorites of the first season. But an honorable mention would be Progress, in that Brian Keith, who was an actor of my youth, Family Affair.
Amazing.
Oh, yay.
And if anybody goes back and watches it again, keep in mind that he had lung cancer when he filmed this. So that is even more poignant.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Wasn't it one of his last appearances?
I thought it was, but he had a handful after that.
Oh.
He killed himself in 1997 when the pain. I believe his son had killed himself also.
Oh, geez.
But he was suffering late stages of lung cancer. So that makes that episode even more poignant.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if he'd actually told anybody that he had lung cancer.
Wow.
But yeah, it was 1997 is when he took his own life. So, but Duet obviously is heads and shoulders above everything. But there were several episodes that were very good, even if it was a B plot, at starting to lay the foundation for character development. And it was interesting to come back after watching it all the way through and seeing how the characters evolved and the writing evolved. So.
Yeah,
good stuff. And speaking of head and shoulders above the rest, Anil O. Polat is also here. Anil, do you have a few favorites of season one? Get more sleep.
I have some favorite moments, I guess, because a lot of everyone else has called out some of the best episodes. I guess what sticks out in my mind is Ben Sisko being pulled away from Jennifer's body in the pilot. That kind of just sets the whole tone of the whole series. So you know that this man is living with this pain, and that you just get thrust into that. And then a little bit lighthearted.
Hear him sing, "I can't leave her here."
Yeah, it's hard to watch that, and then so it really in that moment just sets him up, and so you have this whole backstory. A little lighthearted is the Negus is the scene where it's like they kind of recreate The Godfather. I always thought that was
I love that.
really I was like, this is pretty cool. All right. And then, of course, Jake teaching Nog to read. And then, that scene always gets me. And then the introduction of the baseball is another moment. So it makes some of these episodes, which maybe aren't the best, you pick that out, and then you see the baseball. And then when you go back and rewatch the series, you're like, this episode is awesome because it introduces the baseball that has such a big part of the symbolism of the show. And then in the finale, there's a quote that I really like it stuck with me ever since I saw it. And we were talking about being Cirroc's or Jake's age. And I think that's why I was, when I was watching it, it's when I guess that they're arguing about, the school, whether it should exist. And of course, everyone on Starfleet is, this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous argument. And then Jake is talking to Sisko, and he says, well, this is so stupid. And then Commander Sisko says, let me have it here. It may not be what you believe, but that doesn't make it wrong. If you start to think that way, you'll be acting just like Vedic Win, but only from the other side. And I think it's a really great way to put the debate of the science religion debate, which is throughout the series, from the perspective of the scientist. And it kind of, we were talking about it recently, or it came up that Dax was really uncomfortable with Sisko being a prophet and didn't believe anything. She was like really dismissive. So it always brings me back to that moment where Commander Sisko is telling Jake, hey, if we look at it from, if we don't have an open mind, at least, then we're just being kind of closed-minded from the other side. So so those are just some of my favorite moments from the series, and they continue throughout the whole series. They continue and build on those.
Good stuff.
Beautiful.
Very good stuff. Great first season. Boy, other series around the world wish they had a first season as good as this one. What a great send-off. What a great launch. Yeah. All right. Well, we got to run. Cirroc, do you have any final thoughts before we go on season 1?
Just that, Aron is still a part of that memory as much as anything else for me. And the beginning of this journey, that he set us on is always going to be something special. But I also wanted to just add there that to see Nog's growth from not knowing how to read to one day becoming a captain is like one of the greatest stories of triumph for any character.
Mm-hmm. That's what made him a lot of people's favorite all-time character, was that he had the greatest character growth, the greatest character arc of maybe any character in Star Trek history. Thanks everybody for joining us. Anne-Marie, Melissa, Sue, Eve, TJ, Homer, Anil, Grandpa One, Scott, Tierney. It's been a fun one. For the coolest human of all time, Mr. Aron Eisenberg, Cirroc, Lofton, Melissa, and I would like to say thank you all for joining us. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.